Welcome to Recovery Coast to Coast, broadcasting from Clear Channel Studios in Seattle, Washington, carried live on Fox Radio 850 KHHO in Tacoma, Washington, and carried nationally in streaming audio at www.recoverycoasttocoast.org. 2 hours of interviews and features, plus questions and comments about this one-day-at-a-time adventure in personal recovery as we share experience, strength, and hope with others so that they may recover from alcohol and other drug and behavioral addictions. And now, Recovery Coast to Coast is on the air. Here's your host, Neil Scott.
Welcome back once again to Recovery Coast to Coast, America's nightly voice for recovery. It's great to have you with us tonight. We are delighted to have you alongside, and if you're a new listener, we wish you a very special welcome. And if you've been here before, we certainly welcome you back. The program on the air till midnight tonight. We have a very full show lined up. Right now, we're going to head back to Bloomfield, Michigan, and we're going to talk about humor. There was a priest, there was a minister, and a rabbi walked into a bar. Bartender looked up and said, "What is this, a joke?" That's a very lame attempt at humor. A guy who has a pretty good handle on humor is a guy by the name of Tom Cahillane, and he's joining us from back in Michigan, and he's got an exciting book out about addiction, about recovery, and about humor. It's called Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic. Tom, welcome to Recovery Coast to Coast.
Hi, Neil. Great to be here.
I love the book. You know, humor is such a big part of recovery. Years and years and years ago, I traveled around with Father Martin, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Father Martin or not.
Who couldn't be if you're from Michigan?
Well, well, that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
He's from Sacred Heart.
Yes, he is. And I mean, I would just roll in the aisle listening to him, and stories that I'd heard before. But he had such a way of telling the stories, and humor plays such a big role in recovery. Tom is an author, as I mentioned, and he has a book which is called "Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic." He's working on another book, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. He's also a guy that works in an addiction medicine outpatient clinic called Healing Point, and he is involved with a foundation as well. He's pretty busy guy. Tom, first of all, tell me a little bit about your background and how you came to write a book about humor.
Well, the way it kind of happened was unusual. I was bored, and I decided that I was going to put together a blog. I put the blog called Alcoholic Humor back together in, it was 2009, and it kind of didn't become real popular right away, but after a few months, a lot of people started going to the blog. We started to post jokes, and I'd post a few jokes every single day, and I noticed I was getting between 5 and 15,000 page views a day.
Wow.
So as the blog became more successful, I decided to add a Facebook page called Rehab Humor. And I started to make a lot of 12-step friends in the community on Facebook. And Facebook ended up snowballing into, literally thousands of friends. And that snowballed into a Twitter account of people in recovery. And we had 2,200 followers on Twitter, and we had Alcoholic Humor going. And I'm guessing by this time we were getting probably about 10,000 people a day in recovery that were pretty much just reading my jokes. And I think a lot of people don't realize how important humor is in recovery.
Yeah, it's very important.
You got to be able to laugh at yourself. So the bottom line is I decided I'm going to take all of this stuff and jokes that people had been forwarding to me over the years from the community, and I put them together in a book and decided to call it Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic.
Well, I got to believe that there'll probably be a volume 2 of that, because there are so many jokes out there, and people say, well, you didn't have this one in there, or you didn't have that one in there.
Yeah, we're already hearing that.
Yeah. What is your favorite joke in the book, Tom?
Well, it's tough because there's a lot of jokes in there. There's a joke in there about a young man with a parrot. There's this young guy named John, and he receives a parrot as a gift from his cousin. The parrot has a terrible attitude and even worse vocabulary. Now, pretty much every single word that comes out of the bird's mouth was rude and laced with profanity. Now, John tries to change the bad, poor attitude of the parrot by constantly saying only kind words to kind of clean up the bird's vocabulary. So one day, John has a few beers, and John's kind of fed up, and he yells at the parrot. The parrot yells back, so John shakes the parrot, and then he takes the parrot and holds him tight up by his face, and the parrot bites his nose. So John, out of desperation, he grabs the parrot and he just throws him inside the freezer. For a few minutes, the parrot squawks and kicks and squawks some more, but then there's total silence. So John, fearing that he hurt the parrot, opens up the freezer door, and the parrot calmly steps out into John's outstretched arm and says, "Sir, I believe I may have offended you with my rude language and action. I'm sincerely sorry for my inappropriate behavior, and I fully intend to do everything I can to correct my unforgivable rudeness." Now, John's just stunned at the change in the bird's personality, and as he's about to ask what made such a drastic change in his behavior, the bird speaks up very meekly and says, "May I ask what the chicken did?"
It's part of a great book which is called "Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic," that's been put together by Tom Cahillane out of Michigan. It's a it's a very funny book, and I certainly urge you to not only buy the book but to also follow Tom. You can follow him on Twitter. You can follow him on Facebook. Give our listeners a way to do that, if you would.
Well, if you want to follow me on Facebook, just look up Rehab Humor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Alcoholic Humor.
You know, there's a few comedians out there where I mentioned Father Martin. He obviously was not a professional comedian, but he was a pretty funny man.
He could have been, and if he wanted to.
He could have been. In fact, I've got a video of just his jokes. It's 1 hour of Father Martin telling jokes.
I would love to see that.
It's
sometime.
absolutely hysterical, and I'll try to get you a copy of that, Tom. Do you know Mark Lundholm by any chance?
No, I don't.
Look him up. Google him. He's been on the show a number of times. He is a guy in long-term recovery. He's a stand-up comedian. Was a comedian before he got into recovery, and is a comedian now. And a lot of his humor has to do with recovery. It's some pretty funny stuff.
And you know, I may have seen him. I'm just terrible on names.
Tom Cahillane joining us tonight on Recovery Coast to Coast. The current book is called "Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic." He has another book that he is working on. It will be coming out soon, called "Lies and Consequences." Is this a funny book?
Well, it's kind of sort of going to be a funny book, but it's more of a book about the craziest things that we've done under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
Oh, that's great.
And, you know, some of the stories that we're going to put in there, we're not going to use anybody's real names, obviously, but we're going to take real stories, and we're already asking people to submit them, and they are. And we got some great stories. We're going to try and put together maybe 125 stories inside of the book. And we're just going to work with the craziest things under the influence. And I'll tell you, I'm going to start it out with mine. I was down in Florida. I was going through my divorce, and I relapsed. And I obviously wasn't thinking very correctly. And I knew I had to get back to Michigan. So I started to head to the airport to catch my plane, but I was sober enough to realize I could hardly walk, let alone get on a plane. So I knew they weren't going to let me on a plane. I wouldn't have been able to make it through the gate. So I walked out of the hotel room, and I called a cab, and I took a cab from Clearwater Beach, Florida, to Troy, Michigan.
Oh no!
It was quite a ride.
I'm sure that put a dent in your bank account.
Yeah, it sure did.
What did the cab driver say?
Well, it was kind of a very serious man. I walked up to him, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a cab. I want to go to Michigan." I said, "Would you be willing to take me?" And he thought about it for about maybe 5 seconds, and he said, "Yeah, I'll take you." And I told him, I says, "Well, there's only one way I'll go, and that's if you let me drink in your cab." And he said, "Not a problem."
Oh, my goodness. How long did it take?
It took 2 days.
Oh, that's funny. You know, you mentioned the cab. There's also a very funny joke in your book, "Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic." That one about the drunk that was in the back seat and leaned over and talked to the cabbie. I believe, and I'm paraphrasing this, but I believe the guy leaned over and said to the cabbie, "Is there room in the front seat?"
Oh, I do remember that one. He says, isn't that the one where he says, "Would you like a bottle of Canadian Club and a 12-pack of beer?"
Yeah.
And The cabbie says, "Sure." And the guy leans up and he just throws up all over the front seat of his cab.
Oh man, that was a very, very funny one. There's a bazillion of them in there. How can people get the book, Tom?
Well, if they want to get the book, they can go to trustmeI'manalcoholic.com, and they can order the book right online. Or they can also, if they want to have it sent out, they can just dial the letters Rehab Humor.
Rehab Humor. Now, when is the new book coming out?
The new book's not going to be out for probably somewhere around 4 or 5 months.
Oh, that's still a ways away then.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. There's another one of my favorites about the guy sitting at a bar, and he finds a beautiful woman, and he walks up, and the woman whispers in his ear, "For $50, I'll do anything you like." And the guy pulls out a bunch of crumpled old bills and hands them to her and says, "Here, go paint my house."
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one.
It is filled with some very, very funny stories, very funny jokes. Tom Cahillane is the author. He has compiled all of these. Now, you do, in addition to being an author, you're also involved in an outpatient clinic called Healing Point Clinic. Tell us a little bit about that in Michigan.
Well, the Healing Point Clinic is actually a new clinic that we just put together a few months ago. We put it together, myself and Dr. Nasir Tagavi, who's a guy I work with, and he's also a very good friend of mine. He has an enormous interest in helping people with drug or alcohol addiction. I met him somewhere around 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just this wonderful, compassionate physician. His heart and soul go into helping people get better. And without a doubt, he's one of the finest doctors I've ever met. We sat down and we decided that we wanted to put together an outpatient clinic that did addiction medicine and also did addiction counseling, because we strongly feel that the two go hand in hand. A doctor can help you to get sober, but you need to learn about the problem. What's making you use? What's the cause behind it? So we decided we were going to put together the counseling center with it, and it's going very well. We have 2 offices in Livonia, Michigan right now, and we have another one in Commerce Township. Dr. Tagavi is a member of the American Society of Addiction Medicine, and we're in the process right now of getting JACO accredited for the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organizations. We have some wonderful people that are working there, and we're hoping it does well.
Tom Cahillane is joining us tonight on Recovery Coast to Coast. He is the author of Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic. Another book will be coming out probably 6-7 months from now, which is called Lies and Consequences. He's involved in the Healing Point Clinic as well. You also are involved, as if you don't have enough time on your hands, you're also involved with an interesting foundation, Substance Free Future Foundation. What is that? Why did you start it? What is the mission?
Well, Substance Free Future Foundation, myself and a couple other people on the board of directors, Bill Cook and Tom Cahillane, we wanted to work with people that are younger and having problems with addiction, but there's so many organizations out there that work with children and work with teenagers. We felt that the age group of 17 to 23, 24 years old was kind of being left out. And that's one of the age groups where you really and truly can get attacked by drug addiction, alcohol, peer pressure. So we decided that we were going to put together something where we could work in the universities, put together programs for drug-free zones and drug-free parties and tailgate parties at the universities.
Nice.
We also decided that we wanted to work with the families and friends of those that are addicted to drugs or alcohol, to educate them and promote education and addiction treatment. The last thing, Neil, that we wanted to work with was, and I feel really strongly about this, is promoting education about drug and alcohol addiction as an alternative to incarceration for addicts or alcoholics. And it's a new organization. We just got our 501c3 status. I have a lot of background in nonprofits and fundraising, and at one time I was development director for Michigan Paralyzed Veterans of America. I've been president of the Firefighter Support Services, and I've worked with literally tons of different nonprofits. So we're hoping this one does well.
Tom Cahillane joining us tonight on Recovery Coast to Coast. Tom, how long have you been in recovery?
Well, I've been in recovery for a long time. I'm extremely involved in the 12-step community, and I surround myself with people in recovery.
Sticking with the winners.
Sticking with the winners.
Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic is the name of the book. It's all about humor in recovery, and, there's a lot of history in the fellowship in terms of humor. Certainly in the 12 and 12, there's a line that says, don't take yourself too seriously. I think we can all laugh at some things, and we can all, appreciate a good story, and you certainly have collected a great number of them in Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic. Is it available on Amazon by any chance?
Yeah, it's also available on Amazon. It's available in the Kindle version.
But the best way to get it probably is to go right to Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic.
Yeah, and there's also, it's being carried at some, like Brighton Hospital gift shop. Brighton Hospital is another just wonderful place where I actually got sober.
No kidding.
I don't know if you're familiar with Brighton.
I am indeed. There was a woman who was a family counselor there for many, many years, Stephanie Abbott. I don't know whether you knew her or not.
You know something? I know a Stephanie there, but maybe I just don't know her last name.
Yeah, it's a great program. It's been around for a long time.
Could not say more incredible things about that place.
Yeah, Brighton has been around for a long time. It's one of the good, solid treatment programs. A lot of programs have come and gone over the years, but the strong survive, and that certainly is one of the strong ones. And again, if you're interested in humor, if you want some good stories to tell, to share, pick up a copy of Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic. Go to trustmeI'manalcoholic.com. And I assume at your website you can also sign up for the blog and Twitter as well.
Yeah, you can sign up to be on the just click like the Facebook page for Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic. There's links on there to the blog as well.
Tom, as a parting gift for being on the program, I'm going to send you the Father Martin CD. How's that?
Oh, that would be absolutely fabulous.
You will love it. All right, thank you so much for joining us, Tom, from Bloomfield, Michigan. Trust Me, I'm an Alcoholic, and the soon-to-be-published Lies and Consequences. I'm Neil Scott. The program's Recovery Coast to Coast. We're going to take a short time out. We will be back with more right after this.